Raise your hand if you've been called weak, oversensitive, a punk, don't know how to take a joke, and everything in between. Me. I would not consider myself to be the strongest person in the world. I grew up very soft, and those types of traits that you have are very difficult to get rid of. I've tried. I used to be very emotionally expressive, and now I am the exact opposite in fear of being called oversensitive. So I eat my feelings before they eat me. So I know how it feels to be that person who is constantly being called oversensitive or what have you. And today, just like a lot of other phrases, that word is becoming so overly used and used for the wrong reasons. Cancel culture nowadays has everybody very careful with their words on the internet. Or at least that's what it's supposed to do, but sometimes it doesn't really work that way. And there's always a lot of people on the internet who see something online, doesn't like it, and they try to bring down the creator or whoever what in the world? They try to bring down the creator or whoever it was that they didn't like what they said because they don't like what they said. So obviously a lot of creators get a little bit upset about that because it's like, well, we can't even talk about what we want or say what we want on the internet without people getting mad. And to a degree, yeah, that is frustrating when people can't see that what you're saying is just a joke or they take it too personally. But now creators are using the word oversensitive to basically describe anybody who does not agree with or like their content. Anybody who opposes their videos or doesn't like what they put out, even and especially if it's controversial and people start backlashing or saying stuff about it, they'll immediately be like, oh, y'all so oversensitive. It's not oversensitivity. They are getting it twisted with being over defensive. You'll notice a lot of times when people say things on the internet or make jokes and people start talking back, it's because they feel like they are being attacked. They feel like you are specifically talking to them, which you're not, of course, but that's over defensive. That's always putting up fists and being ready to fight because you feel like somebody is attacking you. But oversensitivity is implying that you are overreacting to a certain situation and not reacting appropriately. And while I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, being oversensitive doesn't exist, as I mentioned before, it is very overly used on the internet. My youngest sister, she's 6, I would put her in the category of being oversensitive. I mean, if you look at her the wrong way, and I'm not even exaggerating about this, if you look at her in a way that she does not like, she will start bawling. While oversensitivity is a thing, creators and people on the internet nowadays are using that phrase as an excuse to dish out all responsibility and all fault for certain things that they've said. Because it's a whole lot easier to just be like, hey, I'm not, what I said wasn't wrong. You're the one who's just taking it the wrong way. You're the one who's oversensitive. But what does it actually mean to be oversensitive? We as individuals do not exactly have the power to make judgments on other people based on how they react to a certain situation. Is cancel culture a joke because people don't know how to take a joke? Or is that now just an excuse to try and say controversial and offensive things without taking responsibility for it? So I'm going to use different examples and scenarios to kind of explain the issues with the internet, and the best way to do that, of course, is to go into the comedy genre, because that's normally where the controversies start. You make a risky joke, and then everyone's kind of like, So I am not the biggest fan of the comedy genre. I prefer to be depressed all the time. A lot of people use comedy as a coping mechanism to try and lighten themselves up, but sometimes it tends to do the exact opposite depending on the joke and the targeted audience. And normally with these types of things, people are just like, just brush it off, it's just a joke. I feel like people don't understand the concept that just because you feel like it was just a joke does not mean everybody collectively has to feel the same way. An example I'm going to use is from the movie The Nutty Professor. It actually is a comedy movie, but it has a good moral in it as well. The main character is played by Eddie Murphy. I forgot the main character's name, but he's a professor at a school or a college or something like that. The long story short, the professor finally musters up his courage to ask this very pretty girl, I think she was also a professor or something there. He wants to ask her out. And of course, the audience is supposed to be like, yeah, shoot your shot, go ahead. Now's probably a good time to give some context. The professor is fat. So the whole plot of the movie is for the professor to try and make some potion or a concoction that will help him lose weight really fast because he's big. He's trying to relieve himself of his insecurities of being overweight. So anyways, the girl agrees. So they go out on a date together and they go to a restaurant and there's like a live stand-up comedian. So he's making jokes like comedians do. Eventually the comedian gets to the professor and starts making jokes about him and his weight. The crowd is laughing. Everyone's having a good time. The professor is trying to have a good time, but when all eyes are on him and everyone's laughing on him, it's a little difficult to do that. So he's trying to force out a laugh and a smile so he's not some party pooper, but eventually it gets old and he's just tired of hearing the same joke over and over again. You start to see a shift in his attitude and his mood, seeing that he's very clearly annoyed and also hurt by the jokes because, yeah, we get it, he's fat. So by the end of it, his entire mood was crushed. His date was trying to cheer him up. It didn't work. He went home, had a mental breakdown, and that was the end of that. Not the end of the movie. I'm just saying that was the end of that scene. But that's all you need to know. So, of course, again, in this situation, everyone's going to try to be like, just brush it off. It's just a joke. Like, it's not really that big of a deal. I imagine it's probably really easy to say something like that if you're not fat and you're not the one being made fun of. Which is my first point of this entire thing. Jokes are a lot easier to laugh at when you're not the joke. So in the scene, we get a glimpse of, some of the other people in the crowd. Notice how the men are in these well-fitting, sharp-looking suits, and the women are in dresses that define their curves, and they're all nice and skinny. And meanwhile, the professor is the only elephant in the room. No pun intended. So it's not just him being oversensitive in this case, where the nutty professor is just like, oh, he needs to just get over it. It's just a joke. It's a specific experience that is sensitive to you, and that makes it difficult to force a laugh. It's difficult to laugh at something that you are constantly being ridiculed about. I mean, I imagine overweight people have to go through this every day. So if a joke doesn't pertain to you, it's going to be a lot funnier, right? What about people who are targeted and made fun of, but also laugh along? Why do they find it funny, but others with the same issues or whatever, they don't find it funny? Well, I actually have a personal experience that I had to step back and look at things differently, from a different perspective. It's nothing super complex. It's just when you kind of think about it, it makes sense. So I was scrolling on Pinterest at one point, and on Pinterest, I get a lot of TikTok videos, which I prefer because I don't have TikTok because I prefer not to use it. Okay, so my phone stopped recording because it got too hot, apparently. So I'm just going to refilm the second half of the video and act like I'm fine. I am internally screaming right now, but it's fine. We'll redo it. I'll reiterate everything I said. We're just going to speedrun this. So on Pinterest, I get a lot of TikTok videos, and it's catered to your preference, right? And I enjoy a healthy dose of dark humor every now and then, so it pops up on my feed. And there are these TikTokers who you probably have seen at some point, but they make not just dark humor jokes, but they just make jokes that are a little bit risky. One of their videos popped up on my page, and it was a dark humor joke battle. And one of the last jokes that one of the guys said went like this. What did the guy say to the emo girl? Wait for it. I like your cuts, G. And slapped her wrist.
Please don't cancel me. Please don't cancel me. Please don't cancel me.
Look, I thought it was funny, okay? I don't know. So I thought the joke was amusing, but my spidey senses were tingling, and I decided to go to the comment section because I had a feeling I knew what it would look like. I just wanted to confirm this, but I went to the comment section and it's exactly what I thought. They were like, oh, this joke is too much. Like, I know somebody who cut, or I am somebody who cut, or my sister's brother's mom's cousin's daughter is somebody who cut. Suddenly, everyone in the comments was someone who knew someone who cut or was someone who cut. I'm not going to get into the graphics of what the joke is if you don't get it. I'm sure someone in the comment section will be able to explain it to you. But everyone thought the joke was too much because they knew somebody, or they had some connections with somebody who cut. Well, I also had an immediate family member who did also cut, on top of a whole lot of other mental issues she was having and other things she attempted, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. Yeah, I also know someone who cut, but I still found it funny. Immediately in my mind, I imagine like a lot of people, I'll admit, I was like, okay, look, you guys need to chill out. It's just a joke, Yeah, sure, it's a little on the questionable side, but it's just a joke. It's fine. Everybody calm down. But then I kind of had to take a step back and think, okay, look, just because you find it funny doesn't mean everybody else has to. And also, just because I laughed at the joke and thought it was funny does not mean everyone who did not and took offense to it is weak or doesn't know how to take a joke. I process my emotions very differently, so it really doesn't bother me as much as it used to anymore when I think about it. But that does not mean everybody else gets over the trauma the same exact way. Everybody processes things differently, so I kind of had to sit back and think about that first before I do what a lot of other people would do and be like, okay, you guys need to chill out to joke. The reason why so many of us are so ready to do that is because we make emotional strength relative, which we should not be doing. And that's just because of our natural instinct to want to compare everything. Comparisons make things easier to understand. A lot of times you use analogies or metaphors or similes in order to, this is writing terms, I know, but like I use a lot of examples, just like I did in this video with the Nutty Professor. Use examples and comparisons in order to understand a concept better. Just because someone is weaker in relativity does not mean they're weak, period. For example, let's use physical strength. Just a scenario, say you walk into a gym and you see two guys benching. And if you don't know what benching is, it's a weightlifting term. You lay on a bench and you like press the bar up with weights on it. That's what it is. So say two guys are benching and guy A is benching 300 pounds. And then you look over at guy B and he's benching 400 pounds. In comparison, guy A is weaker than guy B because he's benching less, right? Cool. Do you know how much 300 pounds is? That's like the weight of most fridges. Imagine benching an entire fridge by yourself. That's a lot of weight. So sure, he's not benching 400 pounds like guy B. That doesn't make guy A weak. He's still benching a lot of pounds. If we didn't look at it in a relative way, then we would not think, oh, he's weaker than guy B. Guy B is way stronger. You wouldn't call a third grader dumb compared to a 12th grader because they don't know the same stuff. Like, duh, a third grader is not going to know 12th grade math. Does that make him dumb? No, because he could excel at third grade math. So in certain situations, we should not compare and we should not make things relative to each other. Because when we do that, we start putting labels on what is too much and what is too little. And who are you to make that decision? Trying to determine if someone's reaction is appropriate to a certain situation is difficult when you have no context of their experiences and their past and whatever they went through. You can't neatly put it all in one box and be like, okay, you can get upset about this because this is too much. But this over here is like, that's just a joke. You shouldn't be upset about that. Who are we to make that decision? Is it appropriate to make a joke about someone dying if they just lost somebody and the wound is fresh? A lot of people might argue, yeah, sure, that's fine. I laugh about it, but other people may not feel the same way. Is it okay to make jokes about cutting and other forms of self-harm? Well, I found them funny. That's fine, but other people might not. That doesn't make them oversensitive or soft. So we need to acknowledge that on the internet and see that when we post and say things and other stuff like that. Instead of immediately saying that because I found it amusing, I found it interesting, I found it funny, and I liked it, and someone else doesn't, then in comparison, I'm stronger than them. I am emotionally more kept than them, and I can handle more. I honestly think that both parties could benefit from a little wake-up call, if you will. Both parties meaning creators and just viewers on the internet. I don't want to seem like I'm putting all the blame on content creators because yeah, there are some times where a person is just making a joke and sure, maybe somebody didn't like it or maybe it was too much for somebody, but then they will try to go out of the way to cancel that person, slander their name, or hate their video. So to those types of people who do stuff like that or express how they didn't like something a creator said or whatever, and then everyone calls them oversensitive and that type of thing. Something you need to understand is that you are entitled to your own opinion. Yes, everyone agrees on that. But that does not mean anyone is obligated to have to care about your opinion. I remember my art teacher saying this in 12th grade when she kept getting students like coming up to her during class period or after class period and just being like, look, I think this project's stupid. I don't think we should have to do it. I don't think we should have a final. I don't think we should have this. I don't think we should have that. And just, you know, expressing themselves about the project or whatever it is they had to do. And she was saying how she doesn't understand what it is with this generation and how they feel like everybody has to know what they feel about every single thing. And she said, it's perfectly fine. You're entitled to your opinion. You can think that it's stupid all you want, but you have to do it for the grade. I mean, it's curriculum. It's not my rules. It's literally the rules of the school. You have to do it whether you like it or not. So coming to me complaining about how you hate the project isn't going to do anything. And sure, maybe other students may be like, oh, you're not listening to your students. But frankly, she has a point. And I'm also seeing this pattern where this generation constantly feels like they have to express every single thing that they feel about every single thing. And that people should listen to them. Oh, it's so windy outside and I didn't bring a coat. Do y'all hear that? The walk to campus is not going to be fun, guys. So when you angrily type in the comments on a video of, oh, I didn't like this, or you shouldn't have done that, technically, as long as the creator didn't do anything wrong, like, you know, discriminatory or illegal, then you can't really do anything about it. So don't expect them to care about what you have to say. And that's not me saying that you shouldn't leave comments under videos if you found something that you didn't like. That would be hypocritical of me to say that you shouldn't comment and, talk about things that you want to talk about. Because I do commentary, so I find pop culture topics and I talk about them and give you my opinion piece that no one asks for. But I'm also not expecting anyone to care about my opinion or even to agree with it. I post these videos in hopes that people will watch them, but no one has to. You don't have to click on this video. You decided to do that. So when you give your opinion piece, people do not actually have to listen or care. As someone who eats, sleeps, and breathes the philosophy of Stoicism, it's not apathy, it's just being unbothered. It's looking at things that aren't worth your time and not giving it any time. When you're on the internet and you see people baiting you and saying things that could get you upset, that's what they want. They want you to angrily type in the comments. It's just ignore them. Sometimes it just pays to just not say anything and to be silent, which don't let people mistaken your silence for submission. That's been my problem for a very long time. Not the same thing. Not saying anything about anything doesn't mean you're too afraid to speak up or say anything about it. It just prevents a lot of unnecessary anger and energy that you're giving to someone or something that isn't worth your time. If you really want to comment and make your opinion piece known, that's fine, but just don't expect everyone to care and respond with the response that you want. And then, of course, to the other party of creators and people on the internet who purposely make bold claims and then try to act all surprised when everyone's upset at what they said. Stop trying to act like the victim when you say things that is clearly going to get people heated and upset, and then push all the responsibility on the audience and be like, oh, it's just a joke, y'all so oversensitive, like what are y'all so mad for? Take responsibility when you say bold and outrageous things on the internet. And I'm not saying that you should change what you say on the internet at the expense of other people. You have freedom of speech, yes, sure. That does not mean you have freedom from consequence. So if you said something that hurt someone's feelings or got on a lot of people's nerves and got a lot of people upset, don't go calling them soft and weak because they expressed themselves that it got them upset. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I just feel like it's so common for so many creators to just do that without valid reasoning. Again, sometimes they are valid. Sometimes it's like, yo, you gotta get a chill, it's not that big of a deal. And sometimes I will agree because people do just want to bash people down and hate on their content because people love to hate. But there are other times where they just call them oversensitive for absolutely no reason. It's kind of like this new trend of filmmakers in movie industries. So many people don't like the movies that they make nowadays, not because they're bad, not because they need to be improved. No, it's the audience's fault. The audience just doesn't understand what true art is. They just don't get it. That's why they don't like the new movies coming out. It's giving the same vibe. Them really trying to put all the blame on the audience and be like, it's their fault they don't like the movies, and they're just shunning all responsibility that maybe you just need to make your movies better. It's such a coward move to put all responsibility on everybody else and say that they're the problem and not, evaluating yourself and be like, maybe I should not say that. Maybe I should be careful with my words. If you're bold and you don't like to water things down, go ahead, do that. I'm all for that. But just don't act surprised when people get upset with things that you say and then call them oversensitive for it. Take responsibility. When you say something bold, you're like, I know this is gonna get people upset. I'm still gonna say it anyway. Acknowledge the fact that when you say what you're about to say, it's going to rile people up. Be aware of that. Don't act like you don't know that and you don't get why everybody's mad. People process emotions differently. And this is just not on the internet, this is just in life in general. When we stop making emotional strength relative and start realizing that they're not oversensitive, again, it's more being defensive than anything. And if they are being oversensitive, that does not give you a right to say that they are weak, especially if you didn't go through the same circumstances and experiences. I think it's just something that people in general, not just creators, but people need to keep in the back of their mind and just consciously remember that, because you can forget when we're constantly trying to compare everything. You don't know what's going on with other people's lives. They got a lot going on. Some things trigger them easier than other people. That doesn't make them weak. That doesn't make them oversensitive. So stop using that phrase to try and run away from responsibility. That's all I'm saying. Be a decent human being. And I'll see you in the next one. I'm gonna go to class and hope I don't get blown away by the intense wind. If I don't post, that means I was swept away. Okay, bye.